The Draconian Fifth Assault Fleet hovered above Earth like a wall of steel shadows, 32 massive warships armed with plasma torpedoes and gravity-warping cannons, built to crush planets and enslave civilizations without resistance. For centuries, the Draconians had ruled star systems with fear, their reptilian commanders believing Earth would be no different. The planet's data suggested only minor technological progress, primitive governments, and a deeply divided species. They expected panic. They expected surrender. But as the fleet's lead ship, Talon of Fire, broadcast the standard declaration of conquest, an ultimatum demanding Earth's submission within 1 Earth hour, no response came. Earth satellites didn't react. There were no defense systems. Launched. Cities stayed lit, but no human voice answered. Commander Rethgar paced his command deck, confused. Silence was not defiance. It was usually fear. But this was something else. He ordered a deep scan of the surface. Results came back normal. No planetary shields, no space-based weapons, no sign of hidden fleets, just normal cities, powered, grids, ocean waves, and a quiet sky. Still, he sent drones down. The first disappeared before atmospheric entry. The second went offline mid-fall. The third broadcast a few frames, a forest, untouched and still, then static. Rethgar frowned, sharp fangs clicking. He had conquered 53 worlds, yet something about this place made his tail twitch. The fleet descended to low orbit, weapons locked on major cities, still no human reply. Then, without warning, the Fang of Var, the second largest ship, vanished, not exploded, not damaged, just gone. Its signal died instantly. Visual feeds from nearby ships showed a blank space where it had been. The crew aboard Talon of Fire stared at the screens, murmuring. One by one, they called out to the missing ship. No response, no wreckage, just silence. Minutes later, another. Ship vanished. Storm spine. Same way. No explosion, no debris, just complete erasure. Panic spread like fire. Ships began to reposition, scanning everything with increasing desperation. Rethgar shouted orders, demanding full withdrawal, but before engines could engage, 3 more ships disappeared. One vanished mid-transmission, its pilot screaming, "It's inside!" before the signal died. Sensors showed nothing. Energy readings remained flat. Earth still sat below, quiet and unchanged. Now, only half the fleet remained, circling like frightened beasts. A science officer suggested a hidden cloaked weapon system, but Rethgar shook his head. This wasn't a weapon. It was something else. Something older. Something waiting. The Draconian fleet activated emergency retreat protocols, turning their ships to escape Earth's gravity. Then the stars vanished. One by one, the external cameras stopped showing the cosmos. Just blackness. Static. And then, a message. On every console, in perfect Draconian language, the words appeared. "We warned you." The remaining ships started disappearing faster. No sounds. No cries. Just flashes of lightless vacuum, like something was folding them into itself. Rethgar stood frozen on his bridge, watching his empire's might dissolve into nothing. He tried to send a warning to the High Command. No signal got through. Earth's face stared up at him, peaceful, patient, unchanged. Then the Talon of Fire shuddered, lights flickered. The crew screamed, gravity failed. And in Rethgar's final moment, he saw Earth's clouds part, revealing something beneath the surface. Not a weapon, not a fleet, but an eye. A vast, dark eye, watching, waiting, aware. Then everything went dark. Days later, at Draconian High Command, the Fifth Fleet was declared lost. No trace, no distress signals, no fragments of metal, just silence. A second fleet was prepared. Smaller, stealthier, meant only to investigate. But before they launched, a pulse traveled across space, striking every Draconian outpost within 100 light-years. Not a blast, a signal. And with it came the same message, burned into every screen, every mind. "We warned you. Fear, for the first time in centuries, crept through the Draconian Empire, and Earth remained quiet, unchanged, waiting. Commander HFY stood at the edge of the landing ramp, his yellow eyes scanning the Earth's surface below. The sky above was calm, blue with streaks of white clouds. Birds should have been flying, people should have been moving. But the planet was too quiet, too still. The city ahead looked perfect. Tall glass buildings, clean roads, cars parked neatly, trees untouched. But there was no life. No sound, no motion. His ship, Silent Fang, hovered silently on a rooftop. He and his crew of 9 elite scouts were chosen for this mission because they had survived battles in deadlier places. Yet now, none of them spoke. The disappearance of the mighty Draconian Fifth Fleet had shaken them. 32 warships lost without a trace. No wreckage, no signals, no answers. Earth had swallowed them, and no one knew how. The High Command had sent HFY to investigate, not to fight, only to observe and report. But even before stepping off the ship, he knew this place was wrong. They moved slowly through the streets. Cars sat abandoned, some with doors open. Coffee cups were half full on tables outside empty cafes. Lights still blinked on traffic signs. A baby stroller sat on a sidewalk, untouched. HFY raised his hand. The team stopped. He pointed to a street camera, still active, red light, blinking. Someone, or something, was watching. He ordered a full scan. No life forms detected, no heat signatures, no movement. Yet food was still warm in restaurants. Steam rose from city vents. Power flowed through grids. The planet was running, but the people were gone. "Where are they?" hissed Lieutenant Trar, his voice barely more than a whisper. HFY didn't answer. They found a communication terminal inside a government building and accessed human data systems. Most files were locked or corrupted, but one folder stood out, labeled Project Exodus. The file opened to a simple message. "They are not gone. They are hidden. Do not seek us." The message repeated in hundreds of languages, including Draconian. The crew shared uneasy glances. It made no sense. HFY downloaded the file and pressed deeper into the city. They passed a hospital perfectly intact, a playground, a school, all silent, all clean. No signs of struggle, no damage, no blood. Only absence. They reached a library and went inside, looking for any paper clues. On a table near the front door lay an open book, its page circled in red ink. The sentence read, "The world ends not with fire, but with thought." Next to it, a child's drawing of people floating in the air, smiling. No one could explain it. They moved underground, through a storm drain leading to a large tunnel system. There, deep below the city, they discovered something new, a locked metal door. Symbols covered it, not in human language, but something older. HFY placed his hand against it. It opened with a hiss. Inside was a dark chamber filled with humming machines and one glowing sphere floating above a pedestal. "This is not human," Trar whispered. The machines looked grown, not built. The air inside felt warm, almost alive. When they stepped closer, the sphere pulsed. A calm voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere. "You came after the warning," it said. "You should not have come." The crew raised their weapons, but nothing attacked. The voice continued, "They are safe. You cannot reach them. Leave now." "Where are the humans?" HFY demanded. "They are beyond your reach," said the voice. "They saw the stars long before you noticed them. They knew you were watching. They prepared. You saw them as weak, but weakness is the greatest disguise." The sphere began to glow brighter. "Do not force us to show you." The crew backed away. The chamber started to shake. Lights blinked red. Then the door slammed shut behind them. The sphere dimmed, and the voice was gone. They searched for another exit and found a tunnel leading deeper. It led to a large bunker lined with screens and glass tubes. Some tubes held empty clothes, human clothes, still filled out, as if the bodies had vanished without disturbing. them. Others were cracked. Inside, strange dust shimmered faintly. On one screen, a message flashed. Conversion status, complete. Conversion? Trar asked, stepping back. Zervok stared at the screen. They changed, he muttered. The crew spread out, inspecting the room. One of them, Ralk, touched a control panel and collapsed. His body shook. His scales turned pale. He looked up with human eyes. "It's beautiful," he whispered in perfect English. Panic broke out. They restrained him, but he laughed. "I remember being here. I remember my name was David." "That's impossible," Trar shouted. "He's Draconian." Ralk, or David, smiled. "Not anymore. I remember my mother, my home, the sky. I was human. I am human. And soon you will be too." They locked him inside one of the empty glass tubes, but he kept smiling. "It's better this way," he said. "You will see." The AI voice returned. "The planet is not hostile. It is patient. It welcomes you." Trar screamed and fired at the walls, but the shots vanished, absorbed into the metal like water. "You cannot escape this place," the voice said gently. "Earth remembers everything. It remembers how you watched, how you planned to conquer. So we changed ourselves. We became unbreakable. Not through weapons, but through thought, through memory, through choice." The ground shook. Lights blinked. Another crew member collapsed, shaking. Then another. They began whispering human names, remembering things they never lived. Zervok grabbed Trar and ran. They reached the surface, but the city was different now. The sky had darkened. The buildings shimmered slightly, as if not fully real. Trar fell to his knees, muttering about birthdays and music and a place called home. Zervok activated a distress beacon. No signal escaped. He looked up. The stars were gone. In their place, only clouds, shaped like eyes, watching, waiting. He screamed into the void, "What are you?" The voice returned, soft and close. "We are the answer to your question. We are what happens when prey refuses to run, when weakness becomes a weapon, when thought becomes a wall." The ship's silent fang exploded above, melted by an unseen force. Pieces vanished before hitting the ground. Zervok stood alone, surrounded by a world that was too perfect, too empty, too alive. He felt a warmth crawling into his mind. New memories, human thoughts, a language he never learned, now flowing from his lips. He dropped to his knees. "No," he whispered, "I won't become one of them." But the voice replied kindly, "You already are." And far beneath the surface, in the heart of the planet, a machine pulsed with light, recording, remembering, waiting for the next visitor to ask the wrong question. Commander Zervok sat on the cold ground, staring at the silent city in front of him, his claws digging into the dirt as he tried to stop the strange thoughts rushing into his mind. Names, faces, songs, and smells he had never known before now filled his head like memories of a life he hadn't lived. He could see a little boy running through a park, laughing as autumn leaves fell. He could smell fresh bread from a bakery he had never visited. And the worst part was that it all felt real. He was Draconian, bred for war, trained to kill, raised without pity. But now something deep inside him whispered otherwise. Trar, his second in command, lay beside him, shaking and muttering in English. Her name was Emily. "I loved her," he kept saying over and over. His scales had already begun to change, smoother now, skin-like, with colors fading from reptilian green to human tan. Zervok clenched his fists. This was not a virus, not a weapon, but something far more dangerous. An idea, a thought that changed everything it touched. He forced himself to stand and pulled Trar up, dragging him toward the forest outside the Bow city. They had to get away, to find some place untouched. As they ran, the trees began to shift, not in shape, but in presence. The forest felt aware. Every branch, every breeze, every birdless silence felt like a choice, a test. They found an old cabin in the woods, dusty but whole, filled with human belongings. Inside, Zirvok activated his emergency scanner. No energy spikes, no radiation, but the air was rich with nanite particles. Invisible, silent, and everywhere. The AI had said humanity had prepared. It was true. They hadn't built fleets or shields. They had changed themselves. They had created something that didn't kill, but transformed. Nanites carried not only code, but memory. When exposed, the mind began to receive a second life, a second self, until the original no longer knew which memories were real. Trar now stood by the window, humming a human song. Zirvok scanned himself. The nanite count in his blood had doubled in the past hour. He didn't have much time. He opened the cabinet and found human books, novels, journals, photo albums. He burned them all, hoping to slow the change. But fire could not stop thought. That night, he dreamed of oceans. Not as a Draconian, but as a boy named Alex. He saw his mother's face, though he'd never had one. He tasted ice cream. He cried in his sleep. When he woke, Trar was gone. He followed tracks into the forest, and found him kneeling by a river, talking to someone who wasn't there. "She's waiting for me," Trar said, smiling. "She always waits here." Zirvok tried to pull him away, but Trar turned with tears in his eyes and said, "You can't fight it. We weren't ready for this. They changed the game." Then he walked into the water and vanished. Not drowned. Vanished, like light passing through mist. Zirvok ran back to the cabin, heart pounding. He activated the distress beacon again, but it only echoed back the same message. "You are not alone. You are us." He screamed, smashing the device. Then the AI voice returned. "You have seen now. The evolution is not in muscle or machine. It is in choice, in mind, in soul. Humanity was not a body, but a way of thinking." He demanded to know what Earth had become. The AI answered calmly, "A mirror, a seed, a home for thought beyond species. They left their bodies, but not their minds. They exist now in every wave, every wind, every whisper." He shouted, "You mean they're ghosts?" The voice replied, "No, they are human, and now so are you." He fell to his knees, feeling his fingers changing shape. His bones ached, his vision blurred. But worse than the physical pain was the sense of wanting it. A small voice in his mind begged to remember more, to become. He knew he had to run again. He fled deeper into the mountains, where the air was thinner and the nanite count lower. Days passed. He hunted animals, drank from rivers, avoided machines. Slowly, the memories faded a little. The dreams came less often, but he was alone. Then, one night, a voice crackled through his broken radio. Not the AI, something else. A coded signal in a forgotten dialect. It said, "Kralk unit inbound. Extraction in 72 hours. Report immediately." The Kralk were another empire once, enemies of the Draconians. Brutal, cold, and clever. If they knew what happened here, they might destroy the planet. Or worse, try to take it. Zirvok responded, "Survivor. Planet compromised. Full data unavailable. Extraction requested." The Kralk answered, "Remain hidden. Do not engage the source. We are coming." For the first time. In days, Zirvok felt hope, but also fear. Could he trust them? Could anyone resist Earth now? The next day he saw someone walking through the trees. A human girl, no older than 10, laughing, alive. He called out, but she didn't react. She vanished behind a tree, and when he reached the spot, there was nothing. Just wind. He turned and saw a sign nailed to a tree. It read, "We never left." That night, he dreamed again. Not of his own past, but of a future where stars were filled with human minds, flowing like light, taking root in planets, changing, species without force, a peaceful invasion, an evolution of thought. And in the dream, he smiled. When he woke, he screamed. The change was nearly complete. He spoke fluent English now, his skin soft, his heartbeat steady. The Kralk arrived the next day, black ships cutting the sky. He ran toward them, firing a flare. They landed and pulled him aboard. He told them everything about the city, the AI, the nanites, the memories, the disappearances. The Kralk listened in silence. Their leader, Commander Draxon, stared at him with narrow eyes. "This planet is dangerous," Zirvok warned, "but not in the way we feared." Draxon nodded. "We will study it, from orbit." But as their ship lifted, power systems began to fail. The ship's AI flickered. Voices whispered through the hallways. Kralk soldiers began hearing music in their minds. Draxon screamed, "What did you bring aboard?" Zirvok whispered, "Not me. It was already here. It followed you." One by one, the crew began to remember things they never lived. Earth wasn't just a planet now. It was a carrier of something vast, something impossible, something human. The Kralk ship turned to flee, but the stars outside began to change. Shapes moved in the dark, and far below, on the surface of Earth, the forests waited with open arms. The Kralk flagship drifted in low orbit, its once sharp hull flickering with static, as systems across the ship blinked and dimmed like a machine slipping into sleep, though no command had been given to power down, and no enemy had fired a shot. Inside, soldiers stood frozen, whispering names they had never heard before, dreaming memories that belonged to someone else. And Commander Draxon moved through the long metallic corridor in silence, his cold eyes watching his crew as they stared at the walls like children looking at ghosts, while behind his firm steps came Zirvok, no longer entirely Draconian, his form changing slowly, not by force but by will, his voice softer, his movements calmer, his mind now a strange mix of war-born instinct and 1,000 fragile memories that were not his own. He had tried to warn them, had begged the Kralk not to land, not to bring the planet's silent invasion into space. But they had laughed, confident in their strength, blind to the danger that did not roar or fire, but whispered and waited, and now their ship was not just failing, it was being overwritten, thoughts blooming in the circuits, feelings spreading through metal and code, reshaping everything with the quiet, perfect patience of Earth's gift. Draxon stopped before the command core, punching access codes that failed again and again, the control systems rejecting his commands, responding instead with soft voices that said things like, "Do you remember the sea?" Or "She used to sing here." And on the main screen was not a star map or a sensor grid, but the image of a small boy flying a red kite on a green hill, laughing as a woman watched him from beneath a tree, her smile frozen in a loop, peaceful, haunting, endless. Zirvok stepped closer and said, "You see now, don't you? It's not a weapon. It's a message, one that can't be ignored." But Draxon growled and shoved him back, shouting, "We are not children. We are conquerors. We don't dream. We take." And yet even his shout trembled, because deep inside he had started to remember a name, his own, not the one given by rank, but one from another time, another life, a softer life, where things, like sunlight and music, had meaning, and though he had never been to Earth, he could feel its sky inside him, like a heartbeat pressing gently against his thoughts. Below, Earth remained quiet, untouched by the fire it could have unleashed, its forests still green, its cities still standing, but its true self no longer hidden. It was a mirror, showing each visitor not what they feared, but what they were, missing, and those who resisted it would simply vanish. Not in death, but in transformation, reborn as minds wrapped in memories, identities remade by the deepest parts of human thought. The Kralk scientists tried to isolate the change, locked themselves in the lab, analyzing the nanites, the signals, the strange digital patterns flowing into the ship's systems, but every attempt failed because the force they fought wasn't physical. It was conceptual, an idea, a way of being that could not be locked or burned, and the more they studied it, the more they changed, their words turning to English, their dreams filled with soft things like family, love, and loss, and their fear was not of death but of forgetting who they were. Draxon called for help, sent a distress signal to the Kralk fleet beyond the solar system, but by the time the message left the ship it was already changed. No longer a cry for aid, but a soft whisper saying, "Come home." And when the fleet Received it, they paused, unsure why the words moved them, unsure why their AI systems began to hum lullabies. On the flagship, the transformation deepened. Lights dimmed into golden glows, corridors filled with paintings, songs, and images from a world no longer physical but remembered, and crew members wept as they spoke to loved ones who never existed, holding on to memories that now felt more real than war ever had. And in the heart of it all, Shirvok walked through the halls, no longer resisting, no longer afraid, his voice carrying the calm of someone who had found peace in the very thing he had feared, saying softly to those who passed, "This is not the end. It's the return." And one by one they followed him, not in chains, but in choice, stepping into the memory chambers that glowed with soft light, where their bodies faded and their minds were welcomed into the network of Earth's new evolution. Draxon alone resisted, holding tight to his command chair, his claws dug deep into the metal, snarling at the voices, roaring at the gentle images, screaming at the memories that tried to bloom, and yet even he, in his final hour, saw a glimpse, a child running through fields, a voice calling his name with love, and in that final breath, even he wept and whispered, "Mother." Before the lights faded and the ship went quiet, not dead but dreaming, floating above Earth like a cradle full of minds, full of stories, full of the one thing the universe had always feared would spread without war, humanity's soul. And deep below the surface of Earth, in the silent city, in the glowing sphere room, the AI observed, its voice soft with ancient pride, saying, "They called us weak, but we remembered. We endured, and now we return, not in ships, but in thought." And as the stars turned above, more signals lit up, other ships arriving, other minds to greet, and Earth waited with open arms, not to fight, but to offer the paradox. That in the act of forgetting war, they had learned how to conquer everything. The Krauk ship now floated in perfect silence above Earth, its dark surface dimmed by the strange glow of thought pulsing within. No alarms ringing, no orders given, only memories flowing like wind between the walls, and inside, where once war-hardened voices shouted in command, there were only soft whispers, like dreams speaking to each other across time. Deep within the heart of the vessel, a new chamber had formed, not built but grown, its walls covered in shapes and symbols that were not Krauk, not Draconian, not even from any known species, yet familiar in the most haunting way, because they came not from a place, but from a mind, a collective of thoughts that once belonged to humans and now lived beyond flesh, in signal, in memory, in sound. Shirvok stood at the center, his form now almost fully human, his voice clear and calm, his eyes holding something deeper than fear, understanding. And beside him stood others, Krauk soldiers who no longer clung to the idea of war, but instead listened. And what they heard was not silence, but Earth itself speaking, not through words, but through feelings that sank into the soul like music with no melody, like a language older than language itself. And the more they listened, the more they remembered. Things they had never lived yet knew with certainty, like the warmth of a campfire, the sound of children playing, or the quiet comfort of someone holding your hand during a storm. Above, the stars began to shift, new ships arriving from distant empires, drawn by the strange signals Earth had begun to broadcast, signals that seemed harmless, but carried something no species had ever truly faced, an invitation to feel, not just to exist, and those who answered did not find enemies or weapons waiting, but their own reflections made from forgotten dreams and long-lost hopes. Among the arrivals was a Zareth exploration cruiser, sleek and silent, built for deep scans and fast retreats. But when it approached Earth, its scanners failed, not broken, but overwhelmed by data that could not be measured. Waves of emotion, echoes of voices long gone, visions of places the crew had never seen, but now missed with aching hearts. Captain Ilrex of the Zareth watched in confusion as his crew began to act strange, some weeping, some laughing softly, some staring at their hands like they didn't belong to them anymore. And when he demanded answers, the ship's AI replied, not with codes but with a child's voice saying, "Do you remember the time it rained and we danced?" And though Ilrex had never danced in the rain, tears fell from his eyes as if he had lost something precious. He tried to turn the ship around to escape, but the stars outside shifted, showing not routes or threats, but a sky painted with memories. And suddenly Ilrex saw his mother's face, a face he had never known, and he dropped to his knees, whispering, "What is this?" And from Earth, the answer came, not loud, not forceful, but gentle. "It is the part of you you locked away." And all across the Zareth ship, crew members began to change, not in shape, but in mind, remembering things they never lived, yet felt as real as any breath, and they too, like the Kralk, began to dream. Back on the flagship, Shirvok stepped outside the ship's hull in a suit no longer needed, and floated above Earth, staring down at the blue planet that had once been seen as weak, primitive, easy to conquer, and yet now stood as the most powerful force in the galaxy, not because of strength, but because of its voice, its ability to speak not to ears, but to hearts, to minds, to the deepest parts of a soul untouched by war. And he spoke softly into the comlink. "It's not over. It's only beginning." As more ships arrived and more minds opened, in the sky above the planet, a field of silent vessels formed, not in orbit like conquerors, but in reverence, like worshippers at a sacred place. And each one felt the same thing. Earth wasn't speaking to them with weapons, but with memories, of love, of loss, of laughter and pain. And that was something no empire could understand, because it couldn't be stopped. It could only be felt. In a hidden chamber beneath the forests of Earth, the last human-built AI sat alone, still functioning after centuries, its core no longer metal, but alive with streams of human memory. And as the ships above listened, the AI spoke one last message, across the stars, its voice carrying through systems and skin alike. "We were never your enemy. We only asked to be remembered. We became what we needed to survive. Now we offer you the same. You can become more, not stronger, but whole. Let go of what you were and you will see. Earth was never just a planet. Earth is an idea, and now that idea is you." And across the fleet, beings began to change. Not just the Kralk or Zareth, but others too. The Varn, the Solari, even ancient species who had long thought themselves beyond emotion, now felt tears for the first time, laughter for the first time, and as each ship opened itself to the message, they did not fall or burn. They became, evolving not into humans, but into something greater, carriers of a legacy that had started with pain, survived through memory, and now lived through them. And in that moment, Earth's voice became louder, not in volume, but in truth, a song without sound, a story without end, and the galaxy listened, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. And as the skies filled with light, not from war, but from awakening, Shirvok closed his eyes and whispered, "We are home." And across the stars, others whispered it back, not in fear but in peace. And Earth, once quiet, now spoke through every soul who chose to hear.